I am not sleeping with you anymore, Martin. Not until you start acting like a real man. Those words hit me like a sledgehammer on a Thursday night in our bedroom in Austin, Texas. Jessica, the woman I had loved for 7 years, the one I thought I would grow old with, just delivered an ultimatum that would change everything. I stood there, stunned, watching her cross her arms with that look of determination I used to admire. But instead of begging, instead of pleading like she clearly expected, I simply nodded and said, "Okay." The confusion on her face was instant. This was not the reaction she had planned for. And in that moment something clicked inside me. This was not about intimacy. 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 Intimacy offer. This was about power. And I refused to play her game anymore. Before I tell you how my calm response completely destroyed her world, I want to know where you are watching this from. Drop your city in the comments below. And if you have ever dealt with someone trying to control you through ultimatums, hit that like button and subscribe because this story gets wild. Trust me, you will want to see how this plays out. Let me take you back to where this all started. Jessica and I met 5 years before that awful night at a tech conference in San Francisco. I was there as a software engineer presenting on cloud architecture, and she was attending as a marketing manager for a startup. We connected over coffee during a break, and I remember thinking she was the most captivating person I had ever met. Sharp, confident, independent. She had this energy that drew people in, and I felt incredibly lucky when she agreed to dinner that evening. Our relationship moved fast. Within 2 years, we were married in a small ceremony in Napa Valley, surrounded by vineyards and close friends. Those early years felt like a dream. We bought a house together in Austin, a charming 3-bedroom place with a backyard where we talked about maybe getting a dog someday. We split chores, shared finances, supported each other's careers. I genuinely believed we were partners in every sense of the word. But something shifted about a year before that ultimatum. Jessica got promoted at her company. Her salary jumped from $75,000 a year to $140,000. I was happy for her, truly. My own salary as a senior engineer was stable at $95,000, and I felt no competition or resentment. But Jessica started to change. It began with small comments. My colleague's husband just became VP at his company, she would mention casually over dinner. Or, "Do not you want more for us, Martin?" At first I brushed it off. I tried to explain that I was content with my work, that I valued work-life balance over climbing the corporate ladder endlessly. But my explanations seemed to frustrate her more. She started traveling more for work. Business trips. To Dallas, Houston, Denver. She would come home late distracted, scrolling through her phone with a secretive smile I did not recognize. The woman who used to curl up next to me on the couch for movie nights was suddenly too busy, too tired, too distant. Then came that Thursday night. I had made dinner, her old favorite pasta carbonara with garlic bread. I set the table, lit a candle, hoping we could reconnect. When she walked in at 8:30 an hour later than she said she would be, she barely glanced at the meal. "I am not hungry," she said flatly, dropping her bag on the counter. I tried to keep my voice gentle. "Is everything okay, Jess?" That is when she exploded. Weeks, maybe months of pent-up frustration came pouring out. She said I was not ambitious enough. That I was too comfortable with mediocrity. That I did not network with her colleagues or try to impress her boss. That I was not the man she thought she married. And then she delivered the final blow. "I am not sleeping with you anymore, Martin. Not until you start acting like a real man." She listed everything wrong with me. My lack of drive. My refusal to pursue promotions aggressively. My preference for quiet evenings at home over industry events. Each word felt like a knife, but I forced myself to stay calm. I listened to all of it, every accusation, every criticism. When she finally finished, expecting me to crumble or beg or promise to change, I simply said, "Okay. If that is how you feel." The silence that followed was deafening. Jessica stared at me like I had just spoken a foreign language. This was not in her script. She wanted a fight, a chase, a desperate man willing to transform himself for her approval. Instead, she got acceptance. I cleaned up the kitchen alone that night. I wrapped the pasta, put the dishes in the washer, wiped down the counters. Then I grabbed a pillow and blanket and made a bed on the couch in the living room. Jessica watched from the hallway, clearly bewildered, but said nothing. That night, lying in the dark, I felt something unexpected. Not heartbreak, but clarity. The days after the ultimatum were strange. I continued sleeping on the couch, making my own meals, going about my routine. Jessica seemed annoyed that I was not fighting for her attention. She would walk around the house in outfits that used to catch my eye, but I kept my focus elsewhere. I was polite, cordial, even but emotionally distant. She tried to provoke reactions. She would mention plans with friends, staying out late, coming home smelling of wine and perfume. Her phone was always face down now. Notifications silenced. When I walked into a room, she would quickly switch apps or lock her screen. The signs were all there, but I refused to engage. Instead, I focused on myself. I rejoined the gym I had abandoned 3 years earlier when work got busy. I hired a personal trainer named Kyle, a former Marine who pushed me hard. The physical exertion felt good, like I was shedding old skin. I reconnected with my college buddy Dave, who I had barely seen since getting married. Over beers one evening, he said something that stuck with me. "Man, you lost yourself in that marriage. I have been waiting for you to wake up." His words stung, but he was right. I had molded myself into what I thought Jessica wanted, sacrificing hobbies, friendships, even parts of my personality. I started reading books on relationships, boundaries, and self-respect. I learned about codependency, about how giving everything can sometimes mean you have nothing left. At work, I volunteered for a new project that had high visibility. My manager noticed my renewed energy and commitment. For the first time in years, I felt like I was moving forward instead of just existing. Jessica noticed the changes too. I could see it in her eyes when I came home from the gym, when I updated my wardrobe with clothes that actually fit properly, when I made plans that did not revolve around her schedule. But instead of appreciating the transformation, she seemed irritated by it. This was not the version of change she had demanded. 3 weeks after the ultimatum, Jessica announced she had a work trip to Denver over the weekend. "Some big client meeting," she said, barely making eye contact. I nodded and told her to have a safe flight. She looked almost disappointed by my lack of reaction. That Saturday morning, after she left for the airport, I was in the kitchen making coffee when I noticed her iPad on the counter. She had left it behind unlocked. I was not the type to snoop. I never had been. But then a message notification popped up on the screen. It was from someone named Brad. "Cannot wait to see you this weekend. That hotel in Denver has the best views." My heart dropped into my stomach. Brad. I knew that name. Jessica had mentioned him before, the new VP at her company. Someone she described as driven and impressive. I stood there, staring at that message, feeling my entire world tilt. I should have stopped there. But I did not. I opened the Messages app. They were all synced to the same Apple ID. Months of conversations appeared before my eyes. Flirting. Compliments. Brad telling Jessica she deserved better than a husband who was content with average. Jessica responding that I did not understand ambition, not like he did. One message made my blood run cold. Maybe the ultimatum will wake him up. But honestly, I do not even care anymore. The ultimatum was not about fixing our marriage. It was about creating an excuse, a justification for what she was already doing. I felt sick, but beneath the nausea was something else. Absolute clarity. I took screenshots of everything. Every message, every flirtatious exchange, every damning piece of evidence. I emailed them all to myself. Then, I carefully placed the iPad back exactly where I found it. When Jessica returned Sunday night to pack her bag, I was watching television. She walked past me without a word, grabbed her things and left. As the door closed behind her, I said calmly, "Have a safe trip, Jess." She turned, surprised by my tone. For a moment, I thought she might say something. But she just nodded and left. She had no idea I knew, and I intended to keep it that way until I was ready. While Jessica was in Denver with Brad, I took action. Monday morning, I called in sick to work and drove to the office of Thomas Wright, a highly rated divorce attorney I had researched over the weekend. I brought my laptop with all the screenshots saved. Thomas reviewed everything carefully. Texas is a community property state, Martin. But with clear evidence of adultery, we can make sure you are protected and treated fairly. We spent 2 hours going over my options. I opened an individual bank account and transferred exactly half of our joint savings into it. Legally, it was my right. I gathered financial statements, mortgage documents, everything Thomas said I would need. I contacted our accountant to understand the tax implications of divorce. Through it all, I felt strangely calm. This was not about revenge. This was about self-preservation, about refusing to be manipulated any longer. Jessica returned from Denver with a glow I had not seen in months. When I asked how the trip went, she told elaborate lies about client meetings and business dinners. I nodded along, pretending to believe every word.